From above, the dragon's body was a gruesome display, sliced into massive chunks, its neck and spine severed and laid out in a deliberate circular formation. At the center of that ring, jagged, obsidian-like spikes jutted violently from the earth, as if the ground itself had been impaled. He could only stare in silence. The interior of the beast's mouth loomed above him like a cathedral of bone. The shape, the size. This wasn't just any dragon. It was a basilisk, an S-rank catastrophe known in ancient texts as the Dragon of the Sand River, a monstrous fusion of dragon and demon. Its very breath could kill flocks of birds in flight. Wherever its scales touched the earth, life vanished. Entire regions turned into wastelands. That was why this land hadn't seen grass or bloom in over 500 years. Baby Madam peeked out from Vikir's cloak, her tiny body trembling as tears welled in her eyes at the sight of the fallen basilisk. Perched on his shoulder, she clung to the fabric with shaky legs, clearly distressed. Vikir noticed her reaction and gently raised a hand, giving her a soft, reassuring pat. "The dragon's already dead," he murmured, his voice calm despite the weight of the moment. "There's nothing to fear." But deep down, unease lingered. Before his regression, this creature had been one of the three great disasters of the outer world, long before the fall. The basilisk was infamous not only for its destructive power, but for its ability to vanish completely without leaving a trace. Unless it revealed itself, no one even knew it existed. Vikir had always believed it was still out there, hiding. Stepping out from between the jaws of the basilisk, Vikir made his way toward the massive chunks of the creature's body scattered across the sand. As he walked, a sense of disbelief gnawed at him. This dragon hadn't just died, it had been utterly destroyed. The basilisk was known to possess regenerative abilities far superior to even the swamp marsh salamander. For something this powerful, something that bordered on immortality, to be reduced to scattered remains could only mean one thing. There was a being capable of slaying an S-rank monster with near-limitless healing. That realization alone sent a chill through him. The landscape itself only deepened his unease. The sheer atmosphere of the place was unsettling, twisted, wrong. The level of space-time distortion here was more intense than even the Magic Tower or Andromelus's barrier. Rising from the heart of the white sand desert loomed a dark crimson tower, which made it the only place for the tree to be in. Vikir pushed open the heavy doors at the base of the jagged spikes. The moment they creaked apart, a rush of wind burst forth, sweeping over him like a breath from another world. From within his cloak, Baby Madam peeked out, her many eyes widening in silent surprise. Without warning, a spiral of purple mana coiled around Vikir's eye. The swirling energy pulsed and twisted through the air like a living thing. As he stepped further inside, the mana grew so dense it stung his skin. He raised his arm to shield his face, bracing against the force. Behind him, Baby Madam clung tightly to his cloak, her tiny limbs digging in to avoid being torn away. When the surge finally ended, Vikir let out a low chuckle. He recognized it. This was a subdimensional aura, distorted, chaotic, and rare. It was confirmation that he was exactly where he needed to be. Baby Madam huffed as the wind died down, loosening her grip with visible relief. As Vikir stepped into the tower, his eyes were immediately drawn to the massive swords embedded in the ground, some half buried, others tilted at odd angles like relics from forgotten battles. At the heart of it all stood the base of a gnarled, ancient tree. Coiled around its central roots was a throne carved from rough clay, worn by time. Upon it sat a knight, motionless, draped in remnants of armor that had long since begun to crumble. His grainy, stone-like hands rested atop the hilt of a sword, the blade driven deep into the earth beneath him. The Tree of Departed Souls. According to legend, it was planted by the Grand Master of Dark Arts, Zerchi Mord, in the heart of the White Desert, hidden deep within the forests surrounding Le Rouge at Le Noir Mountain. A man tree unlike any other, it doesn't root in soil, but in the mind of a mage. It grows by devouring the karma of souls, and its seed only germinates through mass death. The fruit it bears holds the condensed power of the souls it's consumed. Whoever eats it inherits their strength. As Vikir ventured deeper into the chamber, an eerie familiarity crept over him. The place reminded him of the Cradle of Swords. He studied the blades scattered throughout the area, each one angled upward, their tips piercing the air rather than the earth. That detail stood out. If there was a connection here, he was sure of it. These weren't random placements. A thought flickered through his mind like a warning bell. Was this place tied to the Baskerville bloodline? As Vikir approached the stone throne, he came to a stop, his gaze fixed on the silent knight seated upon it. He studied the figure closely, wondering if this was the master of the tower. Yet no mana, no breath, no trace of life radiated from the knight. It was as if the man had long since passed on, leaving behind nothing but an empty shell and rusted armor. Still, there was something unsettling in his stillness. A torn red cape hung from his shoulders, frayed and dust-covered, yet stubbornly clinging to the battered plates that protected his form. Vikir's eyes narrowed. If this man had been the one to slay the basilisk, then he must have been someone of incredible power. A figure lost to time, unknown, unburied, yet unforgettable. Vikir ignored the knight and moved to the side of the throne. He crouched, stretching out his hand. His priority was retrieving the tree of departed souls. He could question Hugo about the tower later. As his fingertips brushed the tree's root, a soft click echoed behind the throne. 2 candles flickered to life, their crimson flames slicing through the darkness. Vikir froze. One by one, more candles ignited until the entire chamber was bathed in a deep red glow. Baby Madam, perched on his shoulder, began to screech in panic. The entrance door slammed shut with a heavy thud, sealing them in. The red light cast eerie shadows across the knight's form. Then, the knight's fingers twitched. The hand once wrapped around the sword's hilt slipped free. A groan of metal followed as the knight placed a gauntleted hand on the throne's armrest and slowly pushed himself upright. A smirk tugged at Vikir's lips, followed by a soft chuckle. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy. Nothing ever was. Beside him, Baby Madam stared wide-eyed, dread swelling in her gaze as the armored knight rose to his full height, a towering figure that cast a long shadow over Vikir. Sword in hand, the knight loomed like a giant. It's Elder Rings time. Vikir instinctively stepped back, tension coiling in his muscles. Without warning, the knight raised his blade and swung it down in a sweeping arc. The air howled as wind and debris surged with the force of the strike. Vikir moved in the nick of time, leaping backward just as the massive sword crashed into the ground where he'd stood. Stone split and dust exploded outward, a tremor shaking the floor beneath them. The knight wasted no time, launching into a relentless assault. A wide, horizontal slash tore through the air, the sheer force of it kicking up a violent gust. Vikir twisted his body, narrowly avoiding the strike, then ducked low as a follow-up blow came crashing down. The third attack sliced through the space just inches above him, close enough to feel the wind burn across his skin. With fluid, acrobatic grace, he dodged each blow, his movements precise and controlled. But as he maneuvered around yet another swing, something became clear. The knight's attacks were predictable, repetitive, even. There was no strategy, no sense of awareness behind them, just raw, aimless power. Vikir landed lightly on his feet and exhaled through his nose, a flicker of disappointment crossing his expression. These strikes weren't the refined techniques of a seasoned warrior. They were just empty swings, aggressive but lacking intent. Vikir reached behind him with both hands, pulling free the Anubis bow. His jaw tightened, teeth clenched in quiet frustration. He had expected more from a knight tasked with guarding such a significant place, something formidable, legendary. Instead, what stood before him was a husk barely worthy of the title. Disappointment simmered in his chest as he cloaked himself in a layer of protective crimson mana. Raising the bow, he drew the string taut, his fingers steady, eyes locked on his target. He murmured to himself, curious how a knight devoid of mana or life could even fight. But now wasn't the time for questions. Answers could come after. He wanted to end this fight in one strike. The mana-infused arrow burst forward, spinning as arcs of crackling crimson lightning danced along its shaft. It soared through the air with deadly precision, aimed directly at the knight's chest. The armored figure didn't flinch. He stood unmoving, as if resigned to the blow. But just as the arrow closed in, the knight lifted his head, and through the shadowed slit of his visor, a single eye blazed to life, crimson, just like Vikir's. The knight, who mere moments ago had displayed no trace of mana, suddenly leapt into the air, invoking the Baskerville first technique. In a blur, he twisted midair, and the arrow Vikir had loosed passed clean through him, leaving not so much as a scratch. It struck the ground behind him with a thunderous bang, scattering sparks and crimson arcs across the chamber like exploding fireworks. Vikir froze, his eyes wide with disbelief. His crimson gaze flickered with shock as he muttered under his breath. That was the Baskerville first technique. The realization hit hard, but there was no time to process it. The knight landed with crushing force, then launched himself forward. His grip tightened around the hilt of his greatsword, both hands locked in place, and his speed surged with every stride. Vikir's brow twitched in silent frustration. Of course, the knight had been concealing his power all along. He gave a quick glance to baby madam and told her to hide, his voice low but firm. As she scurried away, he slipped the bow back into its slot. No more holding back. This wasn't a fight he could afford to take lightly. Vikir clenched his fist, summoning the Beelzebub sword. Dark energies surged as the weapon began to manifest from the back of his hand. The closer the sound of clashing metal grew, the tighter his grip became, channeling a torrent of mana into the blade. The sword drank deeply from his reserves, greedily feeding off his energy. The instant the knight's sword came crashing down, Vikir moved. He twisted to the side and countered with a vicious slash of the Beelzebub sword. Sparks erupted as steel met steel. But the knight wasn't finished. While Vikir had used the 7th technique, the knight used the 8th. Both techniques landed cleanly. At that moment, the two stood with their backs to each other. Vikir staggered, blood pouring from a deep gash along his left side. His cloak was shredded, fluttering in pieces around him, and his eyes, once glowing crimson, faded into a pale white as pain surged through his body. He had lost the exchange. Behind him, the knight remained still, his visor beginning to crack. Thin fractures webbed across the metal before it gave way. Shards clattered to the floor one by one until the entire mass crumbled with a final, echoing thud, revealing more of the face beneath. It spoke for the first time, asking Vikir if the technique he used was the lurking ambush swordsmanship. The knight slowly lifted his head, revealing the lower half of his face wrapped tightly in worn, time-stained bandages. He inhaled, a slow, deliberate breath. Vikir, now panting heavily, his crimson gaze locked onto the knight as he turned to face him fully once more. His thoughts raced. That footwork, the lurking ambush, and before that, the 8th technique. No doubt about it. Those were techniques of the Baskerville clan. But how? Who the hell are you? Though much of the knight's face remained shrouded in shadow, the visible bandages confirmed his features were almost completely obscured, like a corpse wrapped for burial. From beneath the darkness, one hollow, glowing crimson eye peered back, bearing the unmistakable light of the Baskerville bloodline. Then came his voice, low and cold, with a finality that seemed to silence the world around them. I am Cain Corso le Baskerville, Undertaker of the Grave of Swords.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.